Everyone, we are here with Josh Ethier, and he is the editor on a new film that you may have heard of that just played at Sundance called Buddy. And he also did a few others like Companion and things like that. And we're here. Joshua, how are you, man?
I'm well. I'm well. I'm very, very happy to be here.
I know I'm happy to be here in the not 9-degree weather um, of Sundance, but so Buddy, I loved it. I thought it was really crazy, but can you give us an idea of what the film's about?
Yeah, sure. I don't want to get too spoilery. But the movie is basically about a group of children that are living on a like a Barney styled children's television show, and they basically come to find out that something is wrong with the world that they're living in, and perhaps things are not very safe for them there. And the movie is basically their adventures in trying to escape it.
Yeah, it was done by Casper Kelly, who, of course, everyone knows from Too Many Cooks, who has a knack for the meta. Um, I don't know, like infoldings. It was so Inception. It was so crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
his knowledge and his sort of like playfulness with that sort of classic TV structure that folks my age and older, and hopefully a little bit younger, understand as like like TGIF and the Barney
oh
of the
man,
world and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like all of that stuff kind of plays into like all the work that he does, and he's so imaginative. He's absolutely wonderful. I love him.
it blew me away the level of world building and thought that he put into pretty much everything. But we're here to talk about you. And can you first explain to me how can you talk about what an editor does on the film and how fundamentally it can affect the tone of a film?
Oh yeah. So the editor is responsible for basically putting together all the footage, everything that gets shot. So while they're shooting this film, they were shooting in Ohio, and I was editing in Los Angeles. So I would get the footage downloaded every day, and my assistant would sort of organize it and set it up. And then I'm the person who drags it all into order and plays around with performances and plays around with all the jokes and starts working with things like sound and music and visual effects and all that to say, to see how the movie is going to be presented to the audience. It's basically like there's the first draft of the script, then there's the script that you shoot, and then there's the script that you edit. It's like a 1/3 of the process of the majority of the storytelling in the movie is built in editorial. So yeah, it's fundamental as far as like how tone is concerned, how performances come across, deciding when to lean into humor, lean into scares, or to pace things up or slow things down. It's basically the movie you're watching is the edit. So it's it's
Well,
an
that's
incredibly
that's
important part of
literally
the
it. That's
process.
your but like yeah, I don't because I don't think that people really realize just how much the film is shaped. Um,
Oh yeah, or how much is shot. Like the idea that, for a 3-minute scene in a movie, I have, usually about like an hour and a half of footage. And lots of different choices to make in regards to differing performance or where to go visually, how to sell a gag, how to sell a scare, how to sell a jump, or all that stuff. There's just so much footage involved in it, which is amazing. It's like Stanley Kubrick famously said, like, the price that you pay for editing a movie is shooting one. Like you have to go do all of this work to actually finally sit down in a room and start to sculpt the movie. You try to cover yourself as much as you can on set, in regards to things like camera angles, but also in regards to performance. And you get to sculpt it all later on. Like that's how you get to that point. So it's funny, like the movie starts in a single room with like usually one or two people, with an idea. And then you usually end up in a small room in the middle of the process where it's just 1 to 2 to maybe 3 people where you're doing basically the same thing, except now with, footage that actually exists.
and then you're opening up, and then like you're basically your job is to find the one point of the scene, right?
Yeah.
And
Work outwards from a center point, like what is this scene for? And like, how do I strengthen that? Although in an assembly part part of the process where it's just me and not quite the director yet, because maybe he's still shooting. We're just trying to make sure we're covered in any eventuality.
Right.
You usually have lots of entrances and exits you don't need, extra lines, very repetitive dialogue to make sure that everything is underscored perfectly. And then when you move into director's cut, that's where you start shaping those things out and really working on things like pacing and making sure that things are clear but not repetitive. You don't want the audience
Right.
ahead of the characters. You want the audience to usually be right with the characters. Or if you're masterful at it, in the case of someone like a Kubrick, or something like Usual Suspects, you want the audience to be a little bit behind the characters and then build that reveal in beautifully. Which we had a couple of those on this movie. It's a movie that plays with structure, pretty adeptly, to Casper's credit. And we just had to keep things in that bold direction the whole time while we were editing.
Okay, so this is not a straightforward. This isn't the traditional horror film. This isn't the traditional horror comedy or even sci-fi film. This is something different. And really, initially, you start leaning into the conventions of children's TV from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me how that differs, say, from, a basic horror film from the 90s?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, it's always about trends in media, So if you're looking at like a '90s horror film, there was a lot of like Spielberg and Dante and Carpenter influence. But things get really like edgy and weird around the late '90s with a lot of like new metal soundtracks and stuff. But yeah, so when we were doing this one, it was the approach right off the bat, like right out of the gate of the film, is to create a traditional, PBS styled children's show for these characters to inhabit. And the only way to make that feel real and lived in is to, study that stuff and have a look at it and make sure you're identifying things like cutting patterns, camera angles. Our DP, Zach Cooperstein, did a lot of great work looking at and analyzing that old footage and trying to make sure that what he was doing with his camera team was matching the sort of stuff that you would
Yeah.
have actually seen on PBS on an afternoon in the early 90s. So that made it a lot easier for me to then keep things looking authentic from my end, because I had the right camera angles, I had the right performances. Everybody that worked on this, it was a real big labor of love. Also, give a shout out to our production designer, Anna Kathleen, who did
Oh, it was
an
so good.
incredible job building these sets. I mean, they're so authentic, they look so great. I wish they had had this been like a $40 million movie, they could have like built, Buddy's
No, but
Playhouse in Sundance.
it would have, no, but you know what? I mean, like, it was what it needed to be. Had there
Yeah.
been more money, no.
No,
Like,
I think it's at the perfect level of, everything feels lived in and authentic throughout the multiple sections of the movie. Again, I don't want to give anything away, but it all feels very like real and lived in. And it's incredibly important and helpful for me as an editor, because it means that there's, sometimes when we work on a film, you have to worry about things like, oh, the actress's hair falls in, her face. And we want to make sure that we can see when she's saying this or that. And, everyone really pushing the narrative forward with the design and with the camera work really helps in editorial, because we just get to focus on the emotion and the story and the things we're worried about. So less worrying about like, oh, I can kind of see the seam in the background, and so I want to stay away from that take, or I want to stay away from that angle. We were able to just lean into everything because everyone did such a great job.
now, how involved was Casper in the editing process? Did he?
Oh, fully. Yeah. When he was shooting, obviously he's focusing on the shoot. So I
Yeah.
was assembling and putting the film together. But then right after that, we jumped into director's cut. And although he's Atlanta based and I'm Los Angeles based, we used a piece of software called Pixel View, and we were literally just basically on a Zoom editing room for 8 to 10 hours a day for about 10, 12 weeks. And then he came to
Oof.
Los Angeles, as did some of the other producers that aren't LA based. And we all sat together in a room for about a week and had all of our arguments and all of our, all of our decision making to arrive at a final cut. And then it was back to being remote for dropping in visual effects and continuing to refine small beats. We did have one small pickup shoot, and so all of that was back to being remotely done. But thankfully, because of technology and reliable internet, it was pretty smooth, the whole process.
Yeah, it just viewers, when the final film is up on the screen, they have no idea the toil and the work and the hours and the remote hours and the, so it's just everything just to polish this film to make it what it is. Um, but like what was it like working with Casper on this film and as opposed to some other films you may have done? Like what was his working process like?
Casper comes from, sort of like the Adult Swim world. So
Yeah.
obviously things are a little bit different there in regards to the playfulness, but also like things like deadlines and usual process. But the thing is, like, I didn't want to disrupt his normal workflow. I really wanted to try to adapt to it as best that I could. With regard to deadline, of course, we obviously wanted to make sure that we stayed on schedule because
Yeah.
that's the name of the game in feature filmmaking. But I tried to do as much as I could for him that was usually done for him. Like, for instance, he told me that on Too Many Cooks, which is like a 12 or 13-minute short, he had about a year to edit that. Whereas this is a feature film and we had about, 3.5 months. So there is obviously a little bit of adjustment in there, but I tried to
Wow.
lean into it and to keep things, very open for him. And we keep a very light cutting room anyways. Him and we'd start every day, having a cup of coffee, talk about the movies we were watching or the books that we were reading or the TV that we were watching. And so we formed like a very, very close personal connection, just working together even remotely. And then when he came to LA, it was like just slipping right back into, a friendship. And actually, most of my time in Sundance, I spent just hanging out with him and his family because I didn't get to see them while we were editing that much. It was basically
Uh,
just this, a Zoom call. So getting to spend time with, Casper and his family while we were in Colorado was awesome. I really enjoyed getting to just walk around town with him, go get a cup of coffee, grab a slice of pizza, talk about exactly the same stuff, the movies and the books and the TV show that he's enjoying. He's a wonderful dude. He's incredibly easy to talk to, and obviously we like a lot of the same things. So I found it very easy to just hang out with him, and working with him was amazing because he comes up with stuff, and it's just like the things appear, and he almost kind of like I kind of like talks himself out of it a little bit, and I'd have to learn how to like coax it out of him and be like, hey man, there's no such thing as a bad idea. It's just a bad idea not to try it. So,
yeah.
give me everything and I'll see, what's possible and what I can filter through and try to give you what you're looking for. And we had days where we were just playful. It was like, cool, we know that all this is working. Let's try some stuff. Let's try a different piece of music, or let's try, trimming the scene and seeing if it plays any better, quicker, or, if there's a beat that you really love, let's try to put it back in. We kept it very, very warm and congenial. So it was a great experience.
That's awesome. What is coming up next for you?
Well, I'm actually in the editing room right now of the new Orphan film from Dark Castle.
Ooh, cool,
I
cool.
did I did the last one with them and director William Brent Bell. So it was funny. It was literally the week after we locked Buddy. I had to come over here and set up an office, and I've been working on this since the end of last year.
Well, just keep on working.
I
That's
hope
the name of
so.
the game. Man, you're a busy guy. So I'll let you go. But one quick story I was going to tell you. When you mentioned hair falling in front of an actress's hair, it just made me think of what Roman Polanski did to Faye Dunaway. Did you hear about that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, they were shooting a scene in Chinatown in a restaurant booth, like a shot on her, and this hair kept falling and falling and falling between takes. And finally, Roman Polanski walked up and yanked it off of her head.
Oh my god.
And then went and they shot. And the next day, the costumer put a hat on her.
Oh my god. Well, thankfully Casper didn't do anything like that. So.
But no, I know. But it's like I just thought of like, oh God, yeah, that's a thing. So anyway, um, yeah, Faye Dunaway talks about that in the documentary, and she's just like, I was furious. And anyway,
Yeah,
so
deservedly so. Yeah.
yes, all right, and that's what triggered her bipolar disorder. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and I hope we can chat again on Orphan. And yeah, best of luck to you. And do we know if Buddy has been picked up yet or no?
I don't know. I don't know. I hope so. I know those conversations started after Sundance, so I'm hopeful that there's some news on that soon because I can't wait for more people to see it.
It
It's
has to be picked
wild.
up. Like
Yeah.
that's a midnight movie. Like it's great. All right, everyone. Josh Ethier, thank you so much for taking the time and get back to work.
Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Bye.
All right, take care.